Josh, thank you for joining us on this.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been awesome working with you, Josh. There's two Joshes, so makes it even better.
Right. Well, I'll just go by Woodward, I guess, today. Yeah, for those that maybe not too familiar with you, I can get a little background on kind of who you are and a little about the past.
Excited to do this podcast with you, Josh. I've been doing this in this industry, financial services, most annuities, securities, life insurance, for almost 21 years. And the way I got into it was through an appointment setting program through direct mail, and just took off from there. Fortunate to be a very successful financial seminar producer. That's how I got my teeth cut. And at one point, our best year was like 144 seminars in one year, and we did 20 million of AUM, $44 million of the FIA business, and $3 million of target life premium. So $9 million in revenue and this was in the Great Recession, right? So we ended up taking all that information, all that content, and make the news style videos for digital videos. And this is when the crisis is happening and people are looking for other answers, and the markets were crashing and our phones just lit up like crazy. So spent a lot of our time in marketing, whether it's direct mail or digital advertising. And you've been an amazing partner to us to help us scale to the next program we're doing.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you. And is that how JD Melberg, the company, kind of came into place?
Yeah. So I worked for another company, just like most people do. They get their teeth cut and learn from the best. I always had amazing mentors, be kind of a chameleon, learn from them, do it their way, and get pretty similar results, and then put my own twist on it after a while. But when I left the first career company agency I worked with, I started doing seminars. And I still believe live events is the most predictable type of revenue out there, hands down, even though there's other great ways to market, webinars or online and TV and things of that nature. But that's typically the backbone is live seminars. So I learned a long time ago, the more events you do, the more people you see, the more money you make. So I'd say this business is 70% marketing, 20% conversion, the client being an advisor, and 10% running the business like a business.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know we're doing a lot of marketing here for you or with you. Kind of what are you working on now? Because how many classes are you guys running and where at and all that fun stuff?
Yeah. So we went from offline to online years ago, right? So I was running these personal seminars myself for 144 in a year. And then eventually took them online, like videos and trying to sell virtually and things of that nature. And that worked pretty well. Over a decade, my previous company, I sold it, but we did like $4 billion over 10 years. And a lot of it was index annuities and some AUM and some life, but income planning, safe money products, things of that nature. And it was a lot of advertising, but we all got started by doing seminars and live events. And at first it was dinner seminars and, different type of lead, different type of process, not that they're good or bad. I've done educational ones at nonprofit, seminars and things of that nature. And I'm a big believer in different types of media for these live events. So right now we are doing a heavy amount in direct mail, and we're increasing our budgets towards digital spend to fill the rooms. And because everything might have a pop at first and then it can fatigue, so you have to give it enough rest and rotate through it. I started this new company just under a year and a half ago, and I was doing about 14 seminars a month through, I think with your help, subsidizing filling the room. After we perfected the seminar and taxes, financials, estate planning, or those different topics, we had like 3 different types of seminars or live events. We eventually just said, okay, how do we scale this thing? So as we sit here today, I'm happy to say that we're doing 25 seminars a week, over almost 100 a month. I think we take off 4 weeks out of the year, the 4th of July week and the Thanksgiving week and New Year's week and the first week of the year. But otherwise, we're at 25 a week seminars, and we're doing half direct mail and half social media, so which is working very well because they don't fatigue as much. And it's awesome. So I'd say by the end of the year here, we'll be pretty darn close to 61, 66 seminars a week between 2 states. And then we're going to jump to Texas and so on.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, the growth's been Absolutely phenomenal. And it's been really smart. I mean, like you said, I think the flip between the mailers and social has been a good subsidized. So we're not saturating any sort of market, kind of hitting both sides of those tiers. Yeah. So you're definitely one of those believers that, mailers aren't dead, right? There's still definitely, there's a space there, right?
Well, if you think about it, I'm a data junkie. I look at the numbers and it's how I make all my decisions. If you think about it, people interact in different ways. So when you get a direct mail piece, you can look at it 3 or 4 times on your fridge and you read every sentence. And where if it's a social media ad or online, you make a split decision right away, and you want to go look online and see the reviews. And there's a little bit of crossover, but not a lot. It's almost like a completely different type of client, if you think about it. What's the studies in the past? A client typically needs to see your advertisement 7 times where you get the highest optical conversion rate to show and raise their hand. So the more you see that marketing piece, the more likely you get momentum and you get that converting rate. At the same time, when COVID happened, there wasn't a lot of live events. People were scared with COVID. So people are so pent up. A lot of people wouldn't show to live events because they're afraid to get COVID. But the people that did show up to live events converted a lot more because they were so pent up demand of being away and the offering done in person. Unfortunately, I do believe a lot of the products and services and financial services, AUM, assets and management, securities, life insurance, they're more sold, they're not bought. And the impact of converting a client is substantially higher in person than it is virtually, because it's easy to just hang up and stop watching a video or a webinar, or just say I won't show up to my next Zoom meeting from that standpoint. But you just need a lot more leads if you're going to do it virtually. They both work, by the way.
Yeah.
Versus if you're going to do it in live events. But putting 40 people in a room or 20 people in a room, that is like a first appointment for that client, where they met you. It might be virtually, might be one-on-one.
Yeah,
but they both
for sure.
work.
Yeah, absolutely. The ability to build that credibility in person off of a class and see someone is much more tangible sometimes and a little bit easier. So absolutely. So that's awesome. So long term, I talked about classes going into this time. I know you're going to expand. What's the long-term vision for the new vision?
Well, a lot of things change, right? In the acceleration of change is happening even faster with especially AI, and be able to have things get smarter and do calls for you and text messages for you that are, and so I am a believer that the need of financial advisors to be in person or face to face at some point is always going to be a need there for a certain part of the demographic. The way I built the previous company was pretty amazing because we were able to do national TV ads and financial shows, commercials, or radio shows or radio ads. And we were able to buy this much media for this much price, but it was a shotgun approach. So you had to have really good virtual skills. Yeah. And we got great value, good value for low net worth leads and great value for high net worth leads, because you kind of become a media buying expert once you get good creative to work. The way this one is, I'd say, being built is, instead of just doing shotgun nationally, we're going to look at one city at a time and look at that response rate. And states and city, mostly states, are completely different. Like, for example, taxes in California, they're taxed through the roof out there, and life is expensive. So in poorer states, they don't respond as much. You have to ethically bribe them with like a steak to get them to show, and they have expectations. Probably in Florida or Arizona, they have expectations because there's so much competition. So you have to spend more money to get them to show. But if you can find that piece that gets their attention, and if it's positioned for education versus an ethical bribe with a steak, which does work, by the way, our chicken, but it is a different type of presentation if you're positioned as an educator versus a salesperson, which is not necessarily bad as well. Most financial professionals are. That's what we do. We're really good at sales. So
really good at sales. That's right. Yeah, that's so key. I mean, how times have changed where a shotgun approach probably would have worked in the past. Now you have to be very more analytical, look at state by state, and how I feel like even California to Texas or California to Nevada is different than how it could probably worked in the past.
Yeah, and it all can work. So going back to your original question is, like, I think if we go everywhere where there's a football stadium is kind of the rule of thumb, and you get those markets to break even or get profitable, then you can do national overlay. And when you do national overlay with national media buys, whether it's TV or radio or digital, that's where you get an even much larger lift, because it's awesome to have 400 inbound calls coming in like 5 minutes all at once like that. But if you don't have enough people to answer the phone, or you don't have enough people to hand off the lead to, or the virtual skills aren't there, I think doing it one city at a time is going to be more thoughtful. I kind of learned this a long time ago, and this is for, I know you work with clients that sell virtually, which is awesome.
Yeah.
If you geo market, generally speaking, your cost per converting a client is going to be, your revenue per meeting by the time they sit down with you is probably 4 to 5 times higher than if it's done virtually. So all that means is if you're selling virtually, you have to do a lot more leads. But typically your leads costs are a lot less expensive and you're more efficient because you go back-to-back appointments or something like that. So it's all math at the end of the game, at the end of the day. So I think what we're going to try to look at is, how do we, instead of just go shotgun approach around the whole country, how do we do the major cities and the major states first, then we overlay? Because if you buy nationally, I'll give an example. If we did a ad on CNN, for example, it might cost $1,000 if you just pick one major city. But if you bought the whole country, it might cost $7,000. So you're getting the whole country with going national. And that has some truth to syndicated large radio shows that are national versus just in one city. So the point being is, you're always going to pay a premium if you're geo-marketing in your city where you live than if you let the marketing do and learn virtual skills.
Right. Get a little more eyeballs. Do you see radio and TV and all that still beneficial and something that you'll do in the future?
I believe that a lot of the business that's raised, whether it's AM or annuities, with direct response marketing, and I use the word direct response marketing it's paid advertising, and that can apply to live seminars, whether it's food or non-food, educational. It could be a radio show. It could be a financial show, like an infomercial. But you get one funnel to work really, really, really well, and find that diminishing return as their backbone, which is typically live events. Then you bolt on something to it, like virtual, selling. At least that's my opinion, because advisors that try to jump around from program to program to program, if you don't have long enough runway, then you may have something that works, but you never got finished why it wasn't working, or you didn't get enough time. So I'll give you a quick example. The year I brought in $9 million of revenue, $44 million of fixed index annuity business, $3 million of target paid on premium, and $20 million of new AUM plus the AUM I had. I did my analysis. How much did I spend that year in marketing? I spent like $1.8 million on cheesecake and steak, and mostly at Fleming's. What I found was, like, out of the $44 million of annuity production I did, only $21 million came from the people that actually showed at that event. You know where the difference came from? The $23 million plus the AUM? It came from existing clients, it came from referrals, and it came from replacements, because the markets are crashing. So I don't think people really realize how long the sales cycle is in our industry. Now people are getting smarter. They research everything, and it's a timing issue. So if they know that you're consistent, they consistently see your name, even if you meet with them now, or they go to another event of yours 6 months from now, as long as they have money, then I'm usually saying you can keep coming within a reasonable amount of time. And they identify they're just coming for the steak every time, then we put them on the do not invite list.
There's always those. That's awesome. That's so key. I have the conversation a lot with advisors on that, is like, one, longevity of like, takes time for the marketing and the ramp up. And even when we started working with you, right, we started small with a few classes, and then obviously ramped up to the scale that we are. And you stick into it. And then the re-engagement, retargeting, the emails, just staying in front of them is key for longevity. But it's funny I'm going to go off a little bit on this, just because I find it curiosity, because I haven't been in marketing nearly as long as a lot of other individuals. I've only been in it for, I think, 10 years. I'm doing marketing, and it's always been digital, right? It's always been, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Google. I've never really ventured onto the radio, the mailers, things like that. And so I always find it interesting on how that planning and all that stuff works as well, and how they go through. So I've also learned a lot working with you on that kind of stuff.
Getting the funnel to work and getting clients to convert is step one. That can take longer than you want by testing what doesn't work. And sometimes it's a sales issue. Or, for example, I had a 2 to 3 point process in person through live events, but virtually I found I really needed closer to 6 to 7 touch points, shock and awe kid before they even met me, before the Zoom or something like that virtually. So I was trying to treat virtual potential clients the same as I did in seminar clients, and there's just different type of process. It took a little while to figure out The more events that you do, and then you find that diminishing return, where does it make sense? And I keep going, pushing until the diminishing return. So at our peak in digital spend, we were spending like 800 grand a month in spend. And then anytime I went over above that, like I think the biggest month was close to 1.3 million in spend and just digital advertising alone, not other channels. That's when we had major diminishing return. So how do you find that diminishing return? And as you know, Josh, in social media, if you're buying nationally, you have unlimited areas you can go to, if you're doing webinars, no shortening, that's really refining the quality. But if you're going to do it in a local area and an educational place, you've got to give that place a rest, at least with that media channel. Otherwise, you might have 2 back-to-back months that are really great results, but your third or fourth month starts cratering in responses, and you're paying a lot more because you didn't get enough breather.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like on our side, on a little bit of a smaller scale, for classes, I've always seen like you're spending anywhere between 1,500, to 2,500 per class, right? And anyone that goes over to like 400 to 500, it's like that's diminishing, right? Or maybe you have a ton of people that register, but then your sales diminish because there's so many people in a room. There's the sweet spot of both what you spend and how many people you want in a room and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Just need all the pieces to match.
We have the same problem. Yeah. We have one rock star presenter that can handle 50 people and convert at the same rate. One of our other presenters doesn't want more than 30 people to show because they actually get less results if they have more than 30 people to show. Having that sweet spot. I think the biggest thing in this business is consistency. And it took me a long time to realize this, but the lifetime value of a client is amazing. And once you make them a client or you build that relationship, they want to see you're going to be there for a while. So a lot of money I've made in my previous years was not done from the dollars I put in that year. If I could make a profit with slot machine theory, I put $1 in, I get $1.50 back. How fast can I put that $1 in? That's great, but the reward you're going to get is significantly higher. 1/3 of the business is typically written in the 30 days of meeting them. 1/3 is 60 days, and the last third is probably 6 months out because that CD doesn't mature for 6 months. But then you get a 20% lift from your people that just didn't buy or they did buy or referrals the following next year, year over year. So a lot of people think they don't track the numbers in detail and they judge things too quickly. And I think being consistent is key. Just staying the course for a longer period of time is critical, because if you try to say, this is good or not good in a month or two, you're burning your money. But if you stay with something for 6 months, and it obviously has to have a pulse, like people are showing up and it's not completely bombing, but because you have other things to work out in the funnel. And a lot of it, advisors don't have enough financial runway to be consistent, or their expectations. When I first got in this business, I was taught on how to do a 1-call close, and I don't believe in that. I believe in a 3-appointment process now, but that's how I was taught. And 21 years ago, you can get away with that. You have a lot of cancellations, but people are much more astute today, and they have Google and they research everything.
Yeah, that's huge. I have a conversation all the time. Is like you have to give it time. You can almost tell when advisors are jumping from one spot to the other. But they'll just say like the last program I worked with or the last marketing system I tried, it didn't work. I've never found one that works for me. It's like, honestly, I bet a lot of them work, right? Maybe not some better than others, but I bet if you gave it a decent amount of time for it to build up and grow, like it would have worked. Awesome. One of the biggest questions I have, a lot of our advisors are independent that listen to this, and I think you've built successful businesses and you're continuing to build one now. What kind of advice would you give a solo entrepreneur, financial advisor, like what they need to focus on and what they could possibly do to grow more so, maybe not at the scale you're growing, but maybe more at the scale of like they can stop chasing the next meal and try to keep the lights on, things like that. It's like some of the biggest points.
It's a lot tougher, I think, getting in today than it was, years ago, unless you have a big client pipeline. I mean, annuity sales are through the roof because, in a way, it's like we're the complete opposite of loan officers. 70% of the income is dropped for loan officers because interest rates went up. They can't refi houses, and we've been in such a low interest rate environment for 15 years. Now we're able to get better terms for existing clients. So, and I think they're going to be pretty good terms. Rates aren't going to tank anytime soon. So for the next few years, we're going to be in a very strong bull market for annuities. And most of the people are going to get their business from existing clients, but you always have to have new lead generation coming in, because it may not always be this good. And that's what's going to help you create that pipeline effect. I think to answer your question, know your numbers. When we meet weekly with your team, I'm all over the data. I'm going to look at the price. I'm going to look at the cost per show, the cost per RCP, how many people are shown. We were fortunate to use some data dip software that tells us it's 3% accurate, but it puts an edge where it can tell us how much investable assets outside of real estate this person has. And that's all we can ask for, is get in front of opportunity for a reasonable price and being positioned. We are in the image business. Obviously, you can work anywhere in the world today, but if you're an advisor, look like $1 million. Like, look like you can walk out with $1 million check and versus just a golf shirt. Unless you're already printing money, then you can wear purple all you want. But knowing your numbers, being consistent, and learn one thing at a time, not trying too many marketing channels at the same time. It's very difficult to compare buying leads online for a cheap dollar amount versus doing a live seminar, because live events are the most predictable type of revenue, but it's also one of the most expensive type of revenue. But it does pay off if you stay the course. So once you start, you can't stop. I see so many advisors like, I'll try two, I'll try, like, you're setting yourself up to fail. You need to practice on your presenting. You need to practice on filling the room and the data. And it's okay to start small at the beginning, not just go heavy, but be consistent. And once you get something working, bump it up, bump it up, bump it up. And then once you work out the kinks, we did a lot of testing last year, right? We subsidized the direct mail with social media, and it worked really well. I was kind of blurred a little bit of what came through social media and what came through direct mail, because sometimes you get walk-ins. So we started doing split tests of only direct mail and only social media. And then once we know our numbers, as you know, we scaled pretty quickly from how do we just do, 4 events a week to 25. And now we're going to 66 pretty quickly, because you already kind of know what's going to happen because of the data.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's one thing I have to applaud, like, you and your team too. It's like, one, you guys look at the numbers, right? It's not emotional, too much of a decision. I've heard you mention a couple of times, but you have a business plan and you have a plan that you set forth to grow, and you stick to it, and you stick to those numbers. You just have the plan in place to due to the numbers we did testing a year ago, but it's a very cool thing to see and how organized it is.
Make yourself a budget. I don't think a lot of financial advisors do their own budget for the year. And I was taught by one of my event mentors that you should have a minimum of 25% of every dollar that you bring in revenue go to marketing. I learned from a top marketer, or I call marketers advisors, a top advisor, that his budget was 40%. For every dollar of revenue came in, 40% went to marketing. And so I never went less than 25, but that's if you're in growth mode, is when I went to 40%. Most advisors are cheap and they, I can't afford to. Well, you can't afford not to. It might be a little tough, but you might have to have like 6 figures to say, hey, if I want to write $1 million a month of annuity and $1 million a month of AUM, I need a $150 runway, and more events you do will give you more money, but you have to put that long tail cycle and you start measuring it, because a lot of guys say, oh, I close 50%. Huh? Top advisors I know only close at 30, 35, but they're scalable. Mm-hmm. And if you're closing at 50 or 60%, whatever that number is, you're probably meeting with an engineer 14 meetings that, you're burning your time, which is worth a lot of money. Having your calendar not slammed with quality people to see is the most valuable thing you can actually do. A lot of quality producers, independent advisors out there, if you measure their time per hour in front of client meetings, it's probably $1,000, $2,000 an hour, something like that. That's what they're valued, but they're spending their time on chasing apps or watching some video online or something like that. But if you're slammed with 20, 30 hours a week of FaceTime with your clients, the side effect is revenue is going to come.
Outside of this podcast, of course, right? You can spend as many times watching this podcast and revenue's coming. I'm just kidding. I know we're getting close to the end here, but is there any way, if you want someone to reach out or if they want to hear more, is there any way they can connect with you?
Obviously, we're looking to partner with advisors. Right now, we're just only in Arizona and California. We'll be jumping to Texas and Michigan and everywhere there's a football stadium in the future. But we're testing other markets. What we're doing, instead of trying to make the marketing happen around the Rockstar advisor, what we're doing is we're finding the marketing that works, and then we find the Rockstar advisor. And then our whole business model is split the revenue. And we're happy to share if anybody wants to reach out. I love to share of what works, what doesn't, and a lot of reciprocity. So if you're willing to share back, just find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's probably the best way to ping me.
Cool. And if you're cool with it, I mean, in the video, if you guys are watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, we'll put a little calendar if you want to connect with his team. If you're in those areas and want to hear more, we'll put his calendar link in the bottom. But awesome. And Josh, thank you for taking time for doing this. ask for more. Is there anything else we want to end with? But really do appreciate your time here.
Well, you've been very patient with us and our team. First, we took a lot of your time and we're all over the data. Your patience and your team has been awesome to help us prep and get ahead of that. And so I really appreciate that. But thanks for helping us get where we're going as being a great vendor partner, and can't wait to see what else we can go in other states. So
Awesome. Thanks again.